Hello, everyone. I'm Donna Fiducia.
And I'm Don Neuen, and this is Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt, they would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Welcome to Cowboy Logic Radio, everyone. I'm Donna Fiducia. And Don
Good
Neuen.
evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Don Neuen.
You had this
Pensive. It was a pensive look.
Yes, your fingers on your face, holding your face up like you're...
That's because enough fun and games. It's time to get down to the business of the news. Ladies and gentlemen, let me be the first to welcome you to tonight's absolutely riveting episode of Cowboy Logic Radio. Before we get started, Donna,
Tell us who our affiliates are,
I must
Don.
thank and acknowledge our networks and our affiliates. Ladies and gentlemen, our digital flagship network, Talk America Radio, can be found at talkamericaradio.us. I would encourage you all to go to that website, talkamericaradio.us, and check out the stellar lineup that we have at Talk America Radio. Great
Absolutely.
shows, just like Cowboy Logic Radio.
You're
We've also
so
got
modest.
some very... Well, hey, listen, this is our show, so clearly I think our show is great. And that's why I said great shows like Cowboy Logic.
Oh, okay.
I didn't say
You
you could go to talkamericaradio.us and find all the other shows that want to be as great as our show. I didn't say that, did I, Donna?
Were you thinking that?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
We'll let you pass.
Why would you think I would think something
I'm
like
only
that?
kidding. Tell
All
us
right, here we go.
who the
Terrestrial
rest of our
affiliates.
are.
And ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that don't know what a terrestrial affiliate is, it's an AM/FM radio station that cares enough to carry our show.
For you millennials, it's a box that has an AM and or an FM frequency band on it, and it has two little knobs, one for volume on one side and one on the other side that goes, and you can find the various stations that we're talking about. This particular one happens to be WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM. So what you do, if you're a millennial, is you turn that little dial till it says 92.1, and then you can listen.
Which can be found on many automobiles if you don't have your iPhone plugged into the aux cable. All right, so we've also got WJHC Talk 107.5 serving North Florida, and we've got WLBB 1330 AM and 106.3 FM serving God's country, West Georgia and East Alabama, by gosh. Hey, we sure do appreciate all the folks that believe in us enough to carry Cowboy Logic Radio on their stations and their networks. But you know what? We appreciate you,
Yes,
our
we
valued listener,
Yes, we
even
do.
more. Hey, before we get into something else, Donna, I need to share something with the listeners that we haven't talked about much, and that is the theme song for Cowboy Logic Radio. It's one of your favorite songs, When Cowboys Didn't Dance.
Mm-hmm.
We are privileged and honored to have been granted permission by Rich McDonald of the band Lone Star that is allowing us, gratis, I might add, to use When Cowboys Didn't Dance as the theme song for Cowboy Logic Radio. I would like to encourage you all to do a couple of things. Number one, go to YouTube and search for Lone Star When Cowboys Didn't Dance and watch the video and then like the video.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing I would like for you to do, if you like this song, and Lord knows we play it enough for you, but if you like the song, download it.
Yeah.
Pay 99 cents and download When Cowboys Didn't Dance by Lone Star. It is a great song, and again, we are flattered and we are honored, and we feel privileged to be able to call that the Cowboy Logic theme song.
I love the harmonies in that song. I could listen to it all day.
You like Rich McDonald's voice. You've told me that.
His voice is amazing.
That if he would call in here and sing that song to you, which he told me he would do,
I would melt.
You would melt.
I would melt. That's true. And I'm not a huge country music fan. I love Alan Jackson. I think his voice is phenomenal too. But I'm a rock and roller man, and there's nothing like John Lennon. Just nothing. I mean, Twist and Shout comes on the car radio, on the FM band, millennials, sometimes on the AM band.
And you are laughed at by my oldest son
ticket.
and my youngest son.
I'm getting a speeding ticket. Get out of my way, the pedal to the metal, and I am just screaming at the top of my lungs along with it. The best 2.5 minutes of music. By the way, just a little aside, since I am a rock and roller at heart, and that's really where I got my basis in radio was in FM rock and roll radio. John Lennon did Twist and Shout in one take. One take. Because he said his voice was so gone afterwards, there's no way he could do another one. Just so
I know what you mean. You know, when now I sound like Wolfman Jack.
Yeah, really.
Don't I? Hey, that was a pretty good Wolfman Jack.
Not bad.
Hey, go down here to the furniture outlet, Wolfman Jack.
Clack for the Wolfman. He's going to play your record.
Hey, we got a different show tonight. Donna, why don't you explain to the folks really what we're going to do tonight? Because we sat down this past week when we were mapping out and going through strategery, planning,
yes.
if I can use a Bushism, of what we were going to do this week on the show. And Donna and I decided that we were going to dig back into the archives of Cowboy Logic Radio, and we were going to present to you 3 of our favorite segments.
Well, I think what kind of set it off was the fact that Mark Levin on his Life, Liberty, and Levin TV show on the Fox News Channel had Dr. Peter Pry on this past Sunday. Now, we've had the opportunity to interview Dr. Pry a few times, in fact, and we had the great opportunity to actually meet him and introduce him at the South Carolina Tea Party Coalition Convention.
And eat dinner with him.
That was
and ride around in a car with him.
Yes, he sat in your car.
He did.
Yes.
That was spooky.
It was pretty spooky.
Because we had Dr. Peter Pry and Dr. James Mitchell in the back seat of my car as Don and I drove to dinner one night.
I'm thinking to myself,
about a 45-minute drive, and I'm thinking, man,
we got serious heavy hitters in the car with us right
what are
now.
we doing in our car?
We're going out to dinner with them. What he really does is he's talked about the devastating threat of an EMP. That's really the bottom line. Electromagnetic
He is the
pulse.
foremost expert, in our opinion, and many, on the threat of both a natural and a nuclear electromagnetic pulse event.
Right. And I remember that Mark Levin just basically had a deer in the headlights the first time he interviewed him, as did
Which
we,
was
quite
after
frankly.
we interviewed him.
Yes, we had him first. But overall, tonight's show...
I gotta bring that back up again because that feels so good. Because Mark Levin is absolutely the great one. So whenever Donna and I feature a guest months and months and months and months and months before the great one Mark Levin does, I feel really good.
It does. It makes you feel really good. I knew that you would. Where's another one? Sidney Powell. I'll give you that.
Sidney Powell.
You mark
she
my
even
words.
acknowledged us about this on Facebook.
Yes, she did. And she is going to be on Mark Levin's show, mark our words, in the future. She wrote...
When Mark finally catches up to Cowboy Logic Radio.
And we've had her on a number of times.
And you know what Sidney Powell said this past weekend on Facebook, Donna?
What did she say?
Because I was talking about her book, okay, and that everybody needs to...
Which exposes the corruption in the Department of Justice. All these guys that we're seeing right now, she wrote about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yep, 2014. Here's what she said, Donna, and I'm paraphrasing because I'm not looking at this. She goes, you and Donna were 2 of the first that got it.
Yeah.
Yeah! I feel good.
But in general, what we're doing for this
I'm thinking that Mark Levin might need to give us a call and say, hey, who you guys going to have coming up next week?
I don't think so. We're small potatoes compared
Yeah, but
to
you
Mark
know what?
Levin.
He is the great one. Let me tell you, the way, they talk in Philly there, he's the great one.
We're small potatoes.
Hey, pass me a Philly cheesesteak.
You got a hoagie. No, you know what, Mark? I can tell you.
Adrian.
I know where the Schuylkill Expressway is. I used to live there, too. So, just so you know.
Marvelous. That's simply fascinating, Donna.
But
absolutely riveting.
Can I finish what we're going to say about our show? We are going to feature Dr. Peter Pry. But in general, what we're doing is we're going to show interviews and past guests that we've had the last couple of years, because we've had some great ones, and there's been a lot going on, but at this point, I think we almost need a review. So we need to talk about EMPs with Dr. Pry. We're also going to replay our interview on the Blaze Radio Network with the conservative cartel guys, our buddies Matt Locke and Rocky STUCCI. And also,
they must have had a guest not show up. Hey, can you guys fill in at the last minute? Kind of like everybody does when they call me to be on their show.
And we're also going to play Dinesh D'Souza's interview with us that we did back in August of 2016, right when Hillary's America came out. The Secret History of the Democrat Party. That is a must listen to as well, because it gives you the real unfiltered history of how the Democrats were really the party of the KKK.
Yeah,
the Democrats wanted to keep slaves, and the Democrats are anti-Second Amendment. But go on.
Yeah, they are. Well, here's the deal, ladies and gentlemen. There's very few things that we ask of you. We don't even do advertising on our show. Donna and I do this for free, okay? So when we ask you to do something, we need you to do it, okay? Because it's important. Here's what we want you to do in addition to going and buying the download of When Cowboys Didn't Dance by Lone Star. Mm-hmm. We need for you to go to Dinesh D'Souza's website, and we need for you to purchase the film Hillary's America. Okay? Yep. And if you can't do that, then go on to Amazon.com, the Prime Video thing, and order it. If you watch this film, and especially if you buy it to where you can watch it multiple times and you can have your family and friends watch it, it will educate you beyond anything Donna and I could ever do.
You know, just thinking back, and I hope I get this right, when we interviewed Dinesh, and also in other interviews I've heard him do, he had actors playing slaves and you know, the generals, and reenacting a lot of the Civil War. And one thing he mentioned was that not one Republican voted to keep slavery. Well,
they didn't own slaves either.
Well, that's true. But the thing is, from what I recall, he said the actors came up to him afterwards and said, "Really? Is that true?"
Yeah.
You know, a lot of these black actors that really are just
that were playing slaves and Frederick Douglass and everything else in this film.
And they're just reiterating what they had heard through their lives, and we're learning what the real history was now and going, wow. Because you know what happens if you don't have your history and you don't learn from it, you're bound to repeat it. And I think that is so apparent what's going on right now. So let's talk about what's going on with this IG report. Mishandling of classified information. The IG is now looking into Comey, okay? And the funny thing is, Don, whenever we have guests, Don has this little piece of paper that says, intro the guest again. So now he's holding up, intro the guest again, and he circles me, as in he is the guest. You, Don NEUEN. What?
Intro me, Donna.
I'm intro.
Come on, do it like you mean it. Come on.
I can't.
Well, hold up the sign. Come on, you can.
And our guest this half hour.
I'm not the guest. It
Don
says
NEUEN.
I scratched out guest. And I wrote me.
Oh, I see. Intro you again.
Yeah, come on.
You, Don NEUEN.
That was lame. Intro me like you know what you're doing, please. Come on.
I'm Donna Fiducia, along with my husband, Don NEUEN.
Thank you very much, Donna. That really made me feel special and important. Thank you. Back to you now.
That's not what you're thinking. So anyhow,
10 more minutes, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll get on to real business here.
Yeah, because we are really going to get to some serious information in the rest of the show. EMPs, the conservative cartel on the Blaze Radio
Featuring
Network.
us.
Yes.
And listen, there's another reason that we're playing these things for you, ladies and gentlemen. Donna's going to read the dates of these airings. Peter Pry, Dr. Pry was...
that was January this year.
That was this year. But the cartel was October. And then Dinesh's interview...
August of 2016.
All right. We're showing you how far ahead of the curve the information that we give you is. It blows away the mainstream media. Alternative media, ladies and gentlemen, like Cowboy Logic Radio, is the way to go.
And we do want to cross-promote, quite frankly, the Blaze Radio Network, because our friends on the Conservative Cartel are on the Blaze Radio Network every Saturday morning from 9 to noon Eastern Time. And, of course, they're on our network here.
Right after we're done, Donna.
Exactly.
Yeah, they come on after us.
Yes.
And Ron Phillips, who owns the Conservative Cartel, sends me a check every month for $37.19.
No, he doesn't.
And that is payment for me to plug their show.
No, he doesn't. That's the Equalizer that I was on CBS years ago. I get 37 cents
How did you like that laugh? That was pretty good, don't you?
It was
think?
very sinister. So
What was that?
That was an expelled Russian.
From like 3 weeks ago.
Stop it. He's so sick.
It's like a church house creeper. It just kind of squeaked out.
Expelled Russians. Remember we had Myra Taylor on also a couple weeks ago, who, by the way...
You mean Myra Adams.
Oh, Myra Adams. That's right. Myra Taylor's just one of our great friends.
That's right. Hi, Myra. Donna's just used both of your names on the air.
Myra Adams. I always do that too. Sorry, Myra.
Hey, and you know what's scary, ladies and gentlemen? I'm the amateur.
Yeah, really.
Donna's the professional, the seasoned pro with 64 years in the mainstream media.
So when we had Myra on a couple weeks, I'll just say her first name. This way I won't screw it up again. We had Myra on a couple weeks ago. She's had the funniest. First of all, she said, what's his face from Wisconsin? The one I can't stand.
Paul Ryan?
Yeah, that would be.
Paul Ryan?
What's his face from the Addams Family? Or Eddie Munster?
Oh, Eddie Munster with his haircut. Yeah, the Paul Ryan haircut.
She did say that he's not going to run again. She was right.
You heard it right here on Cowboy Logic Radio, ladies and gentlemen, about 2 weeks before it happened.
Exactly.
Yeah, baby.
But she also said Roger Stone is the Forrest Gump of politics.
Why is that, Donna, for all the millennials that are listening?
He doesn't even another movie that millennials should see besides Dinesh D'Souza's Hillary's America. Anyhow, Roger Stone has actually been named, in this latest lawsuit with the DNC. And it's hilarious because he's going, are you serious here? So Stone now is going to countersue, and he says he's going to look at the servers and the hacking evidence of the DOC. The DNC rather. He's going to look at all of their servers. So, turnabout is fair play. But according to the Daily Caller, Roger Stone now going to use the DNC lawsuit in discovery against the DNC. So be careful what you wish for, folks. Another person...
I don't know the answer to I can't answer that. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure about the answer to that.
That's what I
don't know the answer to this.
Another person...
Who am I?
You are...
Why am I here?
James Comey.
He doesn't know the answer.
Here's the point. The other person who really ought to be careful what he is saying, and be careful what you wish for, folks, because you think you're going against Donald Trump, and you might find yourself in some hot water. Greg Gutfeld's show on Fox this past weekend featuring Rachel Maddow, and I think it was April 19th, Rachel's show when she had Jim Comey on. This was hilarious, folks. Listen in to what Jim Comey's answers to Rachel's poignant questions were.
The man who wrote these memos is our guest tonight. I'm very much looking forward to asking him about that and everything else under the sun.
I don't know enough. Yeah, I can't answer that. I mean, I could, but I can't. I don't know whether I can answer that, Rachel. I don't think I can answer that as I sit here.
Let me ask you a related question that I also don't know if you can answer.
I don't think he can answer that. And Rachel was like oozing. I wonder what was quivering up and down her leg as she was about to interview Big Jim Comey.
Why was he even there then? And let's be fair here, Don. I mean, he's got to know something.
I don't think he knows anything. Clearly, by listening to that, you can tell he has no idea what he can answer about anything.
Then why is he going on this book tour?
Because he's making millions off of this book. That's a scam.
He has to incriminate himself at some point.
He's been incriminating himself.
He can't. Let's be fair here. Seriously, he has to know something.
I don't feel like being fair and balanced, Donna.
Let's see if he knows something. Rachel continues with her poignant interview.
I'm not permitted to answer that. I have no personal knowledge of that. I don't know anything about that, and if I did, I wouldn't say.
I'm going to ask you more questions that you can answer.
I don't know. I don't know. I had no idea, and I didn't know. I don't know for sure. I can't recall. That's another one I can't answer.
I guess he doesn't know.
What does he know?
That's a good question. It's better, I think. What doesn't he know?
I'll tell you what was equally as funny was looking at Rachel Maddow's face as he continually said that he didn't know any of the answers to any of her questions.
It's too funny.
Rachel.
Really, but I mean, it's so ridiculous. And the thing is, McCabe and Comey, it's like fish starting to eat their young. Because McCabe is saying, well, Comey told him to do this. And Comey's saying, well, McCabe did this. And it was the number one, the number two guy. And now they're even saying, the Washington Times, tucked deep inside the Inspector General's report on former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe was the story of an August 2016 phone call from a high-ranking Justice Department official who Mr. McCabe thought was trying to shut down the FBI's investigation into the Clinton Foundation while Hillary Clinton was running for president. Who do you think that is?
Wow, we told you that a long time ago, ladies and gentlemen. It's amazing how the stuff we talk about comes to light. Back to you, Donna.
The other thing that I'm hearing, it was actually on the Fox Business Channel yesterday, but I haven't heard it much since. And that is Rod Rosenstein now says he's taking a hiatus to preside over another case that he's arguing. So he couldn't do both. But he couldn't do that before all the damage was done with Michael Cohen now, could he? But I digress. So is Rosenstein, I feel, trying to distance himself now from Mueller?
I don't think I know the answer to that question. I don't think I can answer that.
Do you know anything?
I don't think
Is there anything that you know?
I don't think I can answer that.
And Devin,
well, I know the answer, but I can't answer that.
And Devin Nunes told Fox's Maria Bartiromo, no official intel to push for the Mueller investigation was ever found. The DNC should sue themselves over Mueller. And another lawmaker actually said, we'd like to give you our preliminary findings, but we have no preliminary findings. Now, we're going on almost a year and a half with this Mueller investigation. This is ridiculous. Plus, if there was anything with the Russians, given all the leaking that's going on, especially with James Comey, that it would have leaked out by now.
I don't know if there's any collusion with the Russians. I don't know that.
Yeah, and you couldn't
if I did know it, I couldn't answer it.
Right. If you did, you couldn't answer.
This past weekend, there was a small but mighty actor that passed away that you had the privilege of actually meeting when you worked at Fox.
I did. Vern Troyer, Mini-Me from the Austin Powers movies, died over the weekend at age 49. He was 2 foot 8 inches tall. Actually died on Saturday.
I remember the picture that you took with him.
Mini-Me.
You had to get down on your knees.
And in hindsight, I thought to myself afterwards, I wonder if he was really insulted. But he was such a good egg about it, really. And the other woman, the one who always yells at Austin Powers, she was there too. In fact,
Herr Fräulein,
yes, and she was actually much prettier than she was in the movies. They really
you didn't even recognize her when she came into Fox. Who are you? Where's your credential? Oh, Herr Fräulein.
But we all bent down and we took this picture with Vern Troyer. Again, he's 2 foot 8 inches tall. And we put our pinky to our lips and went, $1 million.
May he rest in peace, ladies and gentlemen.
Coming up next, The Fed Up Professor, a new feature we have here on Cowboy Logic Radio, who will be exposing the liberal hypocrisy on college campuses. And then our interview with Dr. Peter Pry talking about the electromagnetic pulse and its devastating threat to the United States. It's all coming up next on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Hi, thank you for listening. My name is Ron Phillips, and I'm the owner and operations manager of Talk America Radio. It is with great pride that I offer you this 24/7 stream of some of the finest talk radio programming in the country, but I need your support. We are a listener-supported network. That means we need your help to continue to offer the quality programming you're hearing right now. If you're able, please visit talkamericaradio.us and click the Support Us button. Your donation will go a long way in helping us continue to share the American voice. Thank you.
Hello, welcome back to the Chronicles of Lower Education with moi, the Fed Up Professor. You know, that Cal State Fresno Harpies 2-minute hate against Barbara Bush last week made me think about far-left ideologues closer to home. We have a newbie faculty member on my campus who regularly sends out Marxist calls to action on our all-faculty email list. Her social justice screeds are a study in Orwellian doublespeak. Quote, "If you've ever danced with Marxian scholarship and you are silent on this issue, the ghost of Marx will visit you at midnight. You don't even know this is happening. It's the nature of privilege to be blind to that which doesn't affect us, but it's an educator's responsibility to see it anyway." Unquote. Think Big Brother forcing Winston Smith to admit that 2 + 2 = 5. Newbie McSmugster tells all faculty composition professors to prioritize students' ideas over basic sentence coherence, grammar, and punctuation. Quote, "Following the arbitrary rules of the elite is far, far less important than learning to express one's ideas cogently." Unquote. Right, students don't need to learn the oppressive skills of basic English in order to express their deep, deep insights. Yeah, tell Beethoven to skip practicing piano scales and just write Ode to Joy already. Let me tell you what's going on here. The left controls public education, sends woefully unprepared students to state colleges, which demand that we hold these poor kids to lower standards and graduate them ASAP, or else we're elitist. They call this enlightened pedagogy, but really it's subversion of students' ability to think and communicate. It's George Orwell's Big Brother saying, quote, "Power is in tearing human minds to pieces and putting them together again in new shapes of our own choosing." Something to think about from the Fed Up Professor. See you next week.
This is Don NEUEN, co-host of the Drive Time Sit Rep. Join me as I call in to my Intel analyst, Denise Simon, for my daily situation report, or Sit Rep, the Drive Time Sit Rep. Check talkamericaradio.us for more information and show times.
You're listening to your local news source, WLBB, News Talk 1330 and FM 106.3.
Now, most of the people in this room know what an electromagnetic pulse is, but this is being televised on YouTube, and many of the audience may not know. So I'm going to provide a brief tutorial on electromagnetic pulse. And it may seem strange, well, what are we talking about this obscure scientific issue for here? And I'll tell you why. Because not only can we lose our country, but we can lose our civilization to EMP if it is not understood. It has to be understood by not just the intelligence community and people within the Department of Defense deep state. We're a constitutional republic, and decisions are made by the people. And if the people are ignorant of the greatest threat that faces their civilization, then we will not act to protect against it. As Ambassador Cooper has known, we've known about this for decades, and yet nothing has been done. Nothing has been done to protect the electric grid and the civilian critical infrastructures upon which we all depend to survive. The EMP Commission, on which I served as Chief of Staff, calculated that if there was an EMP from the sun, or an EMP from North Korea, or EMP by sabotage using non-nuclear weapons that caused a nationwide blackout that lasted a year, which is an entirely plausible scenario, up to 90% of our population would die from starvation, disease, and societal collapse. We would have firestorms in cities from exploding gas pipelines. We've got 100 nuclear reactors in this country that only have enough emergency generating power to run themselves and keep their nuclear reactors cool for 7 days. And after 7 days, 100 reactors would go Fukushima, spreading radioactivity everywhere. But most threateningly of all, we only have a 30-day supply of food in the whole country to feed 330 million Americans. 30 days of food at normal consumption rates. In 72 hours, the food begins to spoil because the emergency generators run out of fuel to keep the food temperature controlled and cooled. We couldn't figure out how to keep 330 million Americans alive with no food and no water, which stops immediately. You need massive amounts of electricity to keep food and water provide water to the cities and to keep water going. So that's the problem. Now, what is an EMP? I won't get into the physics of it. We don't have time and all the rest. But everybody in this room and everybody listening to this program has probably had the experience, I'm sure has had the experience, of driving down the road, listening to your radio, and then passing under a high voltage power line. And suddenly you lose the radio until you come out on the other side. What you've just experienced is the effects of electromagnetism, upsetting the electronics in your radio. The field, because the wire is insulated, so it doesn't destroy your radio, but it disrupts it temporarily. Now picture a field that's 1 billion times stronger than that, so powerful that it would destroy not just your radio, but the electronics in your car, so that your car wouldn't be able to operate. Now imagine that electromagnetic field is not just localized to that part of the highway, but it is so big that it covers all of North America. That's what North Korea can do. It can do it right now, because it doesn't need a re-entry vehicle. The EMP phenomena occurs when a nuclear weapon explodes in space, but I'll get to that. Let me first talk about the first view graph. No, go back to the other one. Before we talk about the nuclear EMP, the sun can generate an EMP. And this is a picture, it's not an artist's conception, of an actual coronal mass ejection that would cause an immense EMP that would affect not just North America, but the entire world. That's called a Carrington-class coronal mass ejection. That little blue dot down on the corner of the screen is the size of the Earth compared to that real satellite photograph of a Carrington-class coronal mass ejection. You don't have to be an astrophysicist to understand that if that coronal mass ejection hits the Earth, traveling as it does at 1 million miles an hour or more, that it's going to ruin everybody's whole day. Next view graph. That's what you can do with the nuclear weapon, one nuclear weapon. It depends on the altitude it's detonated at. That inner ring, which is 600 kilometers in radius, is from a weapon that would be detonated at an altitude of 30 kilometers. You can do that with a balloon. A meteorological balloon can get up to 30 kilometers, or a jet doing a zoom climb. If you've got a medium-range missile and you put it in a freighter off the coast of the United States, you could detonate it at maybe 300 kilometers altitude or even 400. And that would cause those outer rings, which are so big they cover basically all the electric grid in North America, taking down Canada, the United States, and a big chunk of Mexico, and putting us into permanent blackout, resulting in the worst-case consequences that I described earlier. Next view graph. And saboteurs can do it. You don't need a nuclear weapon to do an EMP attack. You can do it with non-nuclear EMP weapons or radio frequency weapons, and you don't have to build them or smuggle them. You can actually buy them. This is an actual advertisement from an American magazine selling the EMP suitcase, and it's not being sold as a weapon. The manufacturers are not being irresponsible. This is a device that's actually used for peaceful industrial purposes, because when you're building a factory or laying out an airport, and you want to know what are the electromagnetic transients that are being put out by the machinery or by the radars so that I don't cause a jet to crash or so that my machinery doesn't burn each other out, you want to use a device like this to figure out what the field strengths are. But if you were a terrorist or a criminal or a madman and you bought one of these things, and you don't even need a license to buy it, and put it in the trunk of your car, the waveform, you can't see it on this view graph very well, but it generates 100,000 volts per meter, out to a few hundred yards. So put it in the trunk of your car and go visit the local transformer substation that's outside your city that's not even guarded. Usually there's just a chain link fence with maybe one strand of barbed wire. You just sit there until you see the flames coming out of the transformer. And we've arrived at a place in our high-tech society where a criminal or a terrorist, a madman, one person, can plunge, can knock out the technological pillars of civilization for a major metropolitan area all by himself. If you had a team of people like this, maybe 12 or 20, and they knocked out 20 HV transformers and knew the right ones to knock out, they could put the whole country into blackout. Now let's go to the last view graph, all the way to the end. We don't have time to go through all this. Oh, wait, stop there. Go back to that one. I talked about the threat being here and now. I don't know why the mainstream media doesn't talk about this. The MP Commission has been trying to tell us. North Korea doesn't need a re-entry vehicle for its ICBMs. They've only got 2 satellites orbiting over our country, called the KMS-3 and the KMS-4. That's the pattern of orbit, an example of the pattern of orbit for the KMS-3, which is one of their 2 satellites. And these satellites, we assess, might be nuclear armed. We think there's a real strong possibility they're nuclear armed for EMP attack because they look just like a secret weapon the Soviet Union devised during the Cold War to make a surprise EMP attack against the United States, wherein they disguised a nuclear weapon as a satellite, and they put it on a south polar trajectory, so it approaches us from the south all the time. That's because we have no ballistic missile early warning radars facing south and no interceptors facing south. So they could get that satellite over us and detonate it before we had a chance to shoot it down. And nobody's talking about that, but that's a clear and present danger that orbits over our heads several times a day from North Korea right now. And we assess also that they don't have just ordinary nuclear weapons. As Ambassador Cooper noted, in September, not only did they test a hydrogen bomb, which they described as being capable of super powerful EMP attack, but 2 days later they released a technical report called the EMP Might of Nuclear Weapons, which accurately describes what's called a super EMP weapon. This is a weapon that actually has a very low explosive yield, but it's designed to generate gamma rays, which is what makes extraordinarily powerful EMP fields, the gamma radiation. So powerful that even our best military systems are not hardened to survive it. So the argument that people use that, well, North Korea would never do that because we would retaliate and turn them to a plate of glass, not true in the case of a super EMP weapon. We might not be able to retaliate. And one of the first things that goes is our national technical means, the satellites, their ground stations, the ballistic missile early warning radars. We depend on those things to tell us who attacked us. We would be blind and defenseless immediately afterwards. And they don't have to launch the EMP attack from their own country. They could do it off a ship, a freighter at sea. There's thousands of freighters. It could be terrorists. It could be anyone. Okay, now go forward to the last, let's go to that last view graph. Because I need to wrap this up. Let's go all the way to the end. All right. No, keep going. Keep going. There. All right. Now, beyond EMP, the Russians, the Chinese, the North Koreans, the Iranians, they have all conceived this new way of warfare that is not even on the radar screen of our own Department of Defense. And the EMP Commission has been trying to warn about this. We've been trying to warn about this. They have many names for this new way of warfare. The Russians call it sixth-generation warfare. The Chinese call it total information warfare. It's called many things. I call it blackout wars. Some people call it cybergeddon. But what it is, it's their idea of cyber warfare, which isn't limited to computer viruses and hacking. But it's a combined arms operation that it begins with cyber attacks, but also includes physical sabotage. It includes non-nuclear EMP weapons like the radio frequency weapon I showed you, that briefcase. And the ultimate cyber weapon in their doctrine is nuclear EMP attack. Nuclear. They don't consider that a nuclear attack because the pulse doesn't harm people directly. The pulse passes harmlessly through your bodies and then destroys electronics. Now, the indirect consequences of the pulse are far worse than blasting a city. But it's part of their cyber warfare, total information warfare doctrine. And the idea is to attack the technological Achilles heel of our society, to attack our electric grid, to black out the electric grid, which causes the collapse of all the critical infrastructures that sustain not just the lives of our civilian population, but also our military power. And on this graph, it shows the order in which these things happen. Usually in their doctrine, it would start with a natural phenomenon like a hurricane or a heat wave that would put natural stress on the grid. The whole idea is to take down the grid. And then all the rest of this, any one of those attacks could by itself collapse the grid. The dynamic, the synergism of combining these 4 different avenues of attack against the grid guarantees, a catastrophic outcome. And notice the time scale below is 24 hours. 24 hours. Winning this new way of warfare and defeating your adversary in 24 hours. And it's actually replacing one civilization with another in 24 hours by means of EMP. The Russians, Chinese, the North Koreans, it's all really based on the Russians' work. There's a General Vladimir Slipchenko who wrote a book called No Contact War. And all of their doctrine really copies Slipchenko. Even the Iranian doctrine on this actually praises Slipchenko on page 1 of their doctrine. This new way of war is a way of replacing one civilization with another and not necessarily occupying our territory. a lot of Americans have this misconception that what they want is our wealth, because we ourselves are such a material society. Surely they want our wealth. I mean, if you look at the way, historically, these nations, every nation has its own strategic culture that's a product of its history. And totalitarian states and authoritarian states, their strategic culture tends to one of annihilating your enemies. Annihilating your enemies. You don't want your enemies having a chance to come back. It's better to just wipe the slate clean. So this idea that this would be done as a means of taking over the United States is a misconception. And they have different reasons for doing it. The Iranians have religious reasons, you know, and there are geopolitical reasons for the North Koreans and the others. Now, I see us in a situation with this new way of warfare, sort of in a period, it's similar to me to the period 1937, 38, 39, before World War II broke out. And there were a handful of people like Winston Churchill and Major General J.F.C. Fuller and a small number of people surrounding him who thought that Adolf Hitler was going to launch World War II and that he had a new way of warfare called the Blitzkrieg that had never been conceived of before, where you used combined arms. You used armor and air power and mobile infantry to restore movement to the battlefield so that you could have a revolution in military affairs, all right, and defeat the armies of the Western democracies that were still thinking in terms of World War I tactics, a static battlefield. Churchill and his followers saw this threat coming, tried to warn about it, nobody listened to them. They were actually ridiculed and regarded as madmen until the gathering storm became a real storm and almost swept away the Western democracies. And the only way we turned it back, you know, was by learning how to fight a better blitzkrieg on the battlefields of North Africa and on the plains of Russia, which ultimately cost the world 50 to 60 million lives in the war that was World War II. This revolution in military affairs, the Russians, the Chinese, the North Koreans, the Iranians, they consider it a greater revolution in military affairs than the Blitzkrieg was. In fact, it's the greatest revolution in military affairs in history, and I believe they are right. I believe they are right, because this enables, for the first time in history, a failed state like North Korea that can't even feed its own people to defeat the most advanced societies on earth. In this connection, now, Eric Klein, who is a professor of classics at Oxford, it's a book worth reading with this in mind. He has written a book that I was reading for entertainment, but I didn't realize that it was going to be relevant to this talk. His book is titled 1177 BC, the year civilization collapsed. Klein talks about one of the two great dark ages that befell Western civilization. One of them is little known and little understood, and it happened at the end of the Bronze Age, which was 1,200 centuries before Christ, where the great agricultural civilizations had risen up, Egypt, the Hittites, the Babylonians. But then they were attacked by much lower technology, nomadic peoples, generally called the Sea People, that didn't depend upon these higher, more advanced agricultural systems. And they didn't even know what was happening to them. But basically, the barbarians of that day, you know, burned down the crops, they cut down the olive groves, they made the highways and sea lanes too dangerous to travel, and they destroyed what we would regard as the primitive critical infrastructures of agrarian civilization of the late Bronze Age. They destroyed it. And all of the major civilizations, that's why the Hittites went down, and the Babylonians, and cuneiform writing disappeared. And 1,200 years before Christ, a new dark ages began that lasted several centuries. Only the Egyptians came through. And they were much diminished. They weren't the superpower that they had been. They were much diminished, went into decline, and didn't come back for centuries, not until the early golden age of Greece, you know, that we know from Aristotle, and Plato, and Socrates. And then mankind managed to crawl their way back to the Roman Empire, which reached an even higher technological height than those agrarian civilizations. But it was destroyed by barbarians in 476 AD, when the Visigoths and the Vandals and the like learned that by making the highways dangerous and destroying the aqueducts, they basically were able to destroy the technological infrastructure that sustained those civilizations. And Rome fell from an even greater technological height than the agrarian societies did, and it took even longer to come out of that dark ages. Most historians assess that we didn't really get back to the same level of civilization that the Romans were at the time of the 4th or 5th century BC, AD, until the Industrial Revolution, maybe the early 19th century. So it took more than 1,000 years for us to come back. Now we have reached a level of technological sophistication with our civilization that makes the Romans and the Babylonians and the Egyptians look like nothing. They were in the technological foothills. We have mounted to the Everest or the Matterhorn of technological sophistication. And Klein's point is that complexity of the civilization and its dependence on that complex infrastructure is what made them so vulnerable. So the Romans and the Egyptians and Babylonians didn't even know what was destroying them, just as we seem to be oblivious to how dependent we are on our technology and our electric grid and how important it is to protect it. And God forbid, but we have created a situation and are failing to protect the critical infrastructures that support our civilization. We have arrived at a place where the barbarians of today, the North Koreans, the Iranians, and the Russians and Chinese I would include in that because they reject freedom and it makes them barbarians, put us at risk of toppling the technological pillars that sustain not just our freedom, but our very existence as a people. And we could go into a new, literally and figuratively, a new dark ages that would last how long? It would last how long? It might last millennia to come back if we fall again. And we must not allow that to happen. That too is what's at stake, and it's the biggest thing at stake. And it's why we must not fail. We've got a last chance here with an administration that cares about these things to not fail. And President Trump has led the way. Our President Trump, I was so pleased, in his new national security strategy, is the first president, for the first time, that includes protecting our electric grid and other critical infrastructures from EMP attack in his new national security strategy. So that's a hugely positive thing. And Senator Ron Johnson, Republican chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, passed a bill called the Critical Infrastructure Protection Act that has ordered the Department of Homeland Security to come up with a strategy to protect our society from EMP attack. That's the good news. There's unfortunately more bad news. And I can fairly report this to you because I'm coming from the inside of the first year of the Trump administration. Our EMP Commission worked on this, tried to get this problem solved, and we were so hopeful. Unlike the Obama administration, we were invited many times to meet with the National Security Council staff. In 8 years, we never got to meet with the National Security Council staff in the White House even once. But the door was open for us in this White House. And I know we had an impact because of what happened with the National Security Statement, the new National Security Strategy. But our experience in working with the existing Department of Defense, the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Energy, the people who are supposed to implement President Trump's vision, at the bureaucratic level, it is inaccurate to describe where we are today as being the Trump administration. We have elected President Trump, but it is the Obama administration that's still running the country. These people are going in just the opposite direction, and I've seen it with my own eyes. One example is the termination of the EMP Commission. That was done by an Obama holdover in the Department of Defense, who made false accusations against the commission, and a naive Republican staffer. They found a Republican staffer who would support them, and it resulted in the termination of the EMP Commission in September of last year, the very same month that North Korea successfully tested a hydrogen bomb and demonstrated they can make super EMP weapons. Does it make sense to terminate the commission then? No. And even worse, these same people were persuaded by Obama holdovers to establish a new EMP commission. Half of the members of the new EMP commission will be appointed by Democrats. What do you think they're going to say about the EMP threat? Are they going to regard it as an existential threat that they didn't during 8 years of the Obama administration? They'll do nothing about it. They'll tell people to go to sleep, and that isn't a real threat. There was an EMP task force formed by the Department of Homeland Security, a DHS EMP task force. They were so afraid that they didn't even want us to know who was on that DHS EMP task force. They hid their identities from us. They wouldn't let us brief them because they didn't want us to see their faces. They insisted on a teleconference where they could remain anonymous. I recognize the voice of one of those guys, okay? I feel like calling it out on national television because he's one of the problem children. He was an Obama problem child. And the one guy, the one office in the Department of Homeland Security, there are people in the Department of Homeland Security that care deeply about this issue and want to solve this issue. That guy didn't even know about the existence of the EMP task force. He's the one genuine EMP expert they had, and they kept him in the dark about the EMP task force. And there are other examples that you all know about from the newspapers. You know, I can talk about many inside examples, but Secretary Perry, much to his credit, recently tried to get the U.S. Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to stop closing the coal-fired electric generating plants. The Obama administration wants to close all the coal-fired generating plants because of climate change, which is what they regard as the greatest threat to our national security. The EMP Commission has taken the opposite position. You know, we said, look at those coal-fired plants are the third most resilient form of electric power because they have 6 months worth of coal typically stored in an electric power plant. You know, their technology is the electronics in those things tends to be less vulnerable to EMP phenomena because it's an older kind of electronic technology in these coal-fired plants. So don't close the coal-fired plants. You know, that's what we need. It's one of the steps we would have to have a more resilient electric grid. And also the other forms of energy we use for generating electricity, like natural gas and fuel oil, they ought to be storing more of that stuff on site so we don't have just-in-time electric energy. Secretary Perry directed the U.S. Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to stop closing the coal plants, to pass a regulation. And guess what they said? 1 year into the Trump administration. This just happened like 2 weeks ago. And they both basically told Secretary Perry, get lost. We're not doing it. Could it be that the reason for that is that the U.S. FERC commissioners are, to a man, former attorneys and lobbyists for the electric power industry? I think so. So that's what we've got, you know. I'm told the president is watching us, and I hope so. Okay, I guess the camera is there. President Trump, please. I'm running out of time here, so I'll try to keep it saying. President Trump, if anybody tells you that EMP is not an existential threat to our civilization, tell them you're fired. Okay? President Trump. No. President Trump, if anybody tells you that we cannot, very cost effectively, we think it would only cost $2 billion. If it would only, that we can very inexpensively, using existing technology, protect the grid. And if anybody tells you, oh, we're not sure about that, we need to study the problem, out to the year 2020 and beyond, tell them you're fired. If anybody tells you, oh, President Trump, you know, we don't dare bring back Ronald Reagan's Strategic Defense Initiative. We don't dare bring back the revolutionary defensive technology that is much better than the national missile defense that basically is a result of Bill Clinton's decision to kill what they derided as Star Wars. Star Wars, I think, should be an honorific because it does represent, you know, a technological revolution in military affairs that would defeat this revolution in military affairs. It would defeat it. We have it within our grasp because we are still technologically superior to all of our adversaries. To defeat the billions of dollars they're investing in implementing this strategy and cancel it by deploying the Strategic Defense Initiative, which is also the morally right thing to do. You know, because Ronald Reagan didn't believe in mutual assured destruction. The American people want to be defended. They don't want to be avenged by being forced to destroy the cities of our adversaries. If anybody tells you, Mr. President, we can't build the Strategic Defense Initiative because it would threaten strategic stability. You know, we need to leave our cities vulnerable to North Korea and China and Russia. Please tell them you're fired. Well, thank you so much for hearing me out.
Hello, everyone. I'm Donna Fiducia.
And I'm Don Neuen. And this is Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange didn't think.
Rocky Stucci, this is going to be a treat because we have our great friends from Cowboy Logic Radio.
I love them.
Former Fox News anchor babe, Donna Fiducia, and you Italians, you be good, okay? And the great Don NEUEN. Guys, to the cartel. How are you this morning, Donna and Don?
Yo, Rocky, how you doing?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Don NEUEN, and let me be the first to welcome you to tonight's riveting episode of Cowboy Logic Radio.
No, wait a minute. Don,
Boy, have we got a... What?
No, this is the Conservative Cartel on the Blaze Radio Network. Matt and Rocky are buds. On show.
Rocky, Matt, what's happening? Let me welcome myself to your riveting
Don?
show.
How you doing?
He's just out of control.
What's up, guys?
How are you guys today? Donna, did you hear me? You're my favorite former Fox News anchor babe.
Oh,
my favorite.
Man, I'm blushing, but you can't see that on radio.
No, you cannot. How are you guys? What's going on in the world of Cowboy Logic Radio?
Oh, my gosh. It's just unbelievable. You guys, first of all, sound awesome. So happy to have you, the Conservative Cartel on the Blaze Radio Network. That is just the coolest. Just the coolest. It really
You know why,
is.
Donna?
Why?
Because now, all day long, I go around and go, hey, everybody, I know Matt Locke and Rocky Stucci.
That's true.
Do you guys want to hang out with me?
Does that get you on the bus? Does that get you on the bus in your neighborhood?
It gets me backstage, guys.
Only if he has the
nice.
money to get on the bus. No, but seriously, we've been talking with our good buddy who also has a show, of course, on Talk America Radio. That would be one Denise Simon, and her website is founderscode.com. And she is just totally on the cutting edge with what's going on with this Trump dossier and everything else. There's a guy named Dana Boente who resigned as U.S. attorney yesterday. And this could endanger the whole Mueller-Russia investigation. The plot is thickening here because I think as things kind of get closer to certain individuals, they realize this is going to be a huge part of history, and they want to go down on the right side of this and not the wrong side.
Absolutely.
Well, you know what, Donna, here's my biggest frustration in regards to the Clinton mafia thuggery that we're witnessing today. You know, we've seen so much crap that has come out of the Clinton cartel over all these different years, and now we're talking about a dossier. We're talking about the Russia collusion. We're talking about all these people within the Democratic Party that have been infiltrated within one of the biggest political crimes probably in our history. But do you seriously think, honestly, this is where I get frustrated, with all the things that the Clintons have gotten away with over all these years, do you think that there's actually going to be a conclusion that the American people are going to be satisfied with in regards to all of this?
No, I do not. Yeah. I think the only Achilles heel that will totally bring down the Clintons is going to be through the work of Charles Ortel and Jerome Corsi and others with regard to the Clinton Foundation.
Yeah, you got to follow the money trail. I mean, that's
you got to understand that, well, at least in our opinion, that they are hiding very well behind lawyers and confidentiality, and I can't talk about. That's what we're going to continue hearing.
Why do you need $145 million? Why do you justify selling 20% of our uranium to the Russians? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's obviously, you give us the money, we will give you the favor. They all thought Hillary Clinton was going to be president. Bill Clinton gets $500,000 to give a short speech. I mean, it's unbelievable. And the thing that's really the biggest thing that nobody's talking about here, and Charles Ortel has told this to us numerous times, and it's been years that he's been telling us about this, is that none of this is registered properly with the IRS. And that is huge.
Why would it be? Why would it be? So let me get this in here on the Black Rifle Coffee Hotline. We've got Cowboy Logic Radio. We've got Donna Fiducia, Don NEUEN on the phone. But Donna, why would any of this be on the up and up? Look, I want to get into this because this morning I'm sitting here watching CNN in the Blaze studio, and you know what they're talking about this morning?
Football.
What Mueller has coming out Monday. What's going on with the Trump-Russia collusion and what's going on with the grand jury and what's coming out Monday on CNN. They're not even taking a whiff at this story that is bigger. It's going to be bigger than Watergate when it's all done. And you made a very, very astute comment there, because people want to come down on the right side of the money. They want to come down on the right side of history in this deal. And as the information starts panning out, we're going to find out that this, for one, is huge. For two, it's going to be big names. And for three, there's a lot more to it than any of us even realize.
Well, I don't know what you guys were talking about prior to us joining you, because Donna and I were in the makeup room here at our Cowboy Logic studios since about 8 o'clock this morning, getting ready for the big appearance on your show. But so if I'm being redundant, please let me know. One of the big things that I think that we all need to be watching over the next week or so is this FBI informant. Do you guys agree with me on that?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, the Non-Disclosure Act, they just lifted, right. Yep.
The gag order, right. Now, here's what's real interesting, and again, I don't know where you guys go for all your sources when you're doing your intel research, but I pretty much go to one person, and that's Denise Simon, like Donna said at the beginning of this. And I really do want to plug her, because so often people that get on radio shows or TV shows make statements and claim them to be their own, like they've been sitting around doing all the research. Right. I don't do that. Denise Simon does my work for me. And again, I would encourage anybody that's listening, go check out her website, founderscode.com, founders with an S, code.com. And here's one of the real interesting things she told me, guys. This FBI informant does have the evidence, big time.
Right.
And he kept going to the FBI going, this stinks. This is wrong. What's going on here? Why is this all happening? And the FBI basically said, we're as mad about this as you are. It comes down to politics. And the higher powers that they were talking about, and again, forgive me if you guys have mentioned this, CFIUS. Did you guys bring that up?
No, we have not brought up CFIUS.
Okay, that is the higher power and the politics they're referring to. The higher power was CFIUS, which stands for Committee on Foreign Investments in the United States.
Well, and Don, to interrupt you there, that was the very panel that Hillary Clinton and Eric Holder sat on.
Exactly.
That allowed 20% of uranium in the United States to be sold to Rosatom.
Right.
Exactly.
And Mueller was the FBI
Timothy
director at the
Geithner.
time. Come on here.
Okay, that I think is, they always say, and you guys say it often on your show, follow the money trail.
Mm-hmm. Now,
follow the money trail.
But the plot thickens as of last night, because after they allowed this informant to talk, again, as I said at the top of the show, the number 2 guy in charge of national security in the National Security Division of the Department of Justice is this guy, Dana Boente, and he resigned yesterday. And again, this is the day after the gag order was lifted. He was in charge of the Russian investigation. He was looking into Julian Assange. He was looking into WikiLeaks. And he was an Obama appointee. The U.S. Attorney in charge of Virginia as well. This is his job. He was a U.S. Attorney in charge of Eastern Virginia. He oversaw the probe of Russia. He interacted a lot with Preet Bharara, who was the first U.S. attorney fired by Trump, Bharara up from New York. So what's going on
this
now?
This guy's a bad egg. Hey, Rocky.
Dickens.
Rocky.
Yo.
You think this guy's a problem? We need to whack him?
I know people. You know what I'm talking about?
I know you know people.
Hey, guys, we've got 1 minute left. So, look, in the next segment, I want to get into this just a little bit deeper. I want to talk about, you were talking about following the money, but we have to talk about the main players in this. Mueller, Comey, Rosenstein, Rod, and that whole deal with the Russia deal. So stick around. We've got Donna Fiducia, Don NEUEN from Cowboy Logic Radio on the Black Rifle Coffee Hotline. Don't go anywhere. One more segment. We're digging in. They know everybody. I mean, they know all of the contacts. We might get into a little conspiracy theory. The 2 Italians might start talking back and forth. We don't know yet, but you're going to want to stick around and listen to what they have to say, because it's the truth. and they know a lot of people. And we're gonna get into some back channels of this and continue this conversation with Cowboy Logic Radio. This is the Conservative Cartel. This Saturday morning, we are live on the Blaze Radio Network. Make sure you stick around. You don't want to go anywhere.
The Conservative Cartel will return on the Blaze Radio Network.
To the Ayatollahs of Iran and every terrorist you enable, listen up. You might have met our fresh-faced flower child president and his weak-kneed Ivy League friends, but you haven't met America. You haven't met the heartland, where the people will defend this nation with their bloody, calloused, bare hands, if that's what it takes. You haven't met the steel workers and the hard rock miners or the swamp folks in Cajun country who can wrestle a full-grown gator out of the water. You haven't met the farmers, the cowboys, the loggers, and the truck drivers. You don't know the mountain men who live off the land or the brave cops who fight the good fight in the urban war zones. No, you've never met America. And you ought to pray you never do. I'm the National Rifle Association of America, and I'm freedom's safest place.
I served for almost a decade in the Special Operations community alongside men and women from every branch, every service. And when I came home, missing many of my friends, I came home to a nation that to me felt like it had forgotten the meaning of Memorial Day. I was processing the loss of my friends, and my bride encouraged me to do something about it. And the classic military function is a road march. I went home and I pulled my pack out, and I filled it full of weight, 1 pound for every person that I'd lost. And I started walking, and it was hot, and it was heavy, and it hurt. And I needed that pain, because good pain pushes out bad pain. And I was amazed at how many people I came across that Memorial Day. One older gentleman, just a ramrod straight World War II veteran, who walked as though he knew he had helped save the world, and that generation did. He turned and said something to me. He said, "Son?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Who are you carrying?" That pack got a little bit lighter that day. Make Memorial Day matter again. Extend that branch of recognition to the other sacrificial services. And always, always, always have a great answer to this question. Who are you carrying? My name is Clint Bruce, and I'm carrying the sons and daughters of my friends. Who are you carrying?
You're listening to the Conservative Cartel with Matt Locke and Rocky Stucci, only on the Blaze Radio Network.
You know, there's absolutely two things that have just confused my mind so far this morning, is that I cannot believe that a 3-hour show has gone by so quick, and number two, I cannot believe that there is a snowman in my yard 2 days before Halloween. Folks, welcome back to the program. Rocky Stucci here on the other side of the microphone, my brother at arms, Mr. Matt Locke, the Conservative Cartel, broadcasting live from the 9 Lion Apparel Studios. And on the Black Rifle Coffee Hotline, we have our brother and our sister, Cowboy Logic, people that are true and dear friends to myself, Matt, and Ron. We consider them family. Don NEUEN and Donna Fiducia. Welcome back, guys.
Just a pleasure to be here. It really is, Rocky.
Thanks, Rocky. I'm Don NEUEN, and I'd like to accept your thanks.
We really should explain to everyone that when he first started doing a radio show with me, being an Italian from Jersey, a former Fox News Channel anchor, among other things, 30 years in New York, that I was paid to talk. So Don could never get a word in edgewise. So he took to radio puking and blurting out his name. So now every time we open the mic, he has to do this. It's like a reflex.
That's right.
Radio puking. About it. He says, "I love it." So we were talking about this whole mafia, this informant, this non-disclosure act that came about and was lifted. And I want to ask you guys, Donna and Don, I want to ask your opinion here, because I'm reading an article this morning, and Adam Schiff, who is a Democrat, came out and said, look, we're going to probe Donald Trump for his role in making the DOJ lift this non-disclosure act. I mean, can we get any more bizarre in this country?
And then they talk impeachment every time Trump does something. Impeachment. Because the best defense is a good offense. That really is.
That's right.
Have you guys talked about the difference between the opposition research and the actual dossier?
No.
Okay. Opposition research is what this began as.
Right.
And it's normal. It's normal for candidates to do opposition research on each other. It's normal for the media to do opposition research. This is going back as long as the history of the world almost. But what ended up happening is that information from the opposition research was then compiled and merged into this dossier. And there's a couple of bullet points that I was talking and Donna was talking to Denise about this past week, because we talked about a lot of this on that Drive Time Sit Rep show that we do on Tuesday nights. You know, there was a trade show down in St. Petersburg, Russia. This is where all this information was started to be traded around. Trade show and or event, some event that took place in St. Petersburg, Russia. The dossier didn't even exist until after the GOP primary.
Right.
There's dispute that there's possibly multiple versions of the dossier. You know, everybody was real quick to blame John McCain, who none of us really like, for all of this. But the thing is, the FBI had it before he did.
Right. Yeah, he was late in the party, by the way. He sent his little page or assistant or whatever it was over to Russia, and when the FBI already had it.
Yeah. The thing is, did you guys see that Friday night, last night, the Washington Free Beacon sent a representative to Congress?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, you said you already talked. Again, Donna and I were in makeup, so we want to make sure we're not touching on stuff.
We covered. No, look, and here's the deal, because in what you're talking about, Don, and we've got Donna Fiducia and Don NEUEN from Cowboy Logic Radio on the Black Rifle Coffee hotline. But what we've talked about is the Singer fella from the Washington Free Beacon. His last name's Singer. I don't know his first name. But he's originally the one that paid for opposition research, not only on Trump, but on other Republicans within the party. And like you said, Don, that's very standard. Everybody does opposition research. That's how you do your campaigns. That's how you run on what you want to run on. And that's how things get done in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Matt, you're referring to a guy named Paul Singer. And this is going back to October of 2015.
Paulie.
Yeah, Paulie. Paul Singer. And the thing is, he did hire Fusion GPS to do standard opposition research, but he backed Marco Rubio. Okay, this is just standard. So when the mainstream media comes and says, well, look at that. Fusion GPS was really hired by the Republicans. Well, yeah, initially they were. For standard opposition research.
They're hired by everybody.
But then in March of 2016, after Rubio dropped out and everybody else, Fusion GPS approached Perkins Co., which is a law firm for the Clinton campaign and the DNC. And they approached the general counsel, and they offered to continue Trump opposition research it had started while working for Marco Rubio and this guy, Paul Singer. That's when it really started last March. And they realized, I think, that Trump was getting some headway and they needed some sort of dirt on him. But what's so bizarre to me is they're actually accusing Trump of doing what they are doing.
Well, I think that Jack Ruby had something to do with this.
I think it was on the grassy knoll somewhere.
Jack Ruby had something to do with this opposition research, I think.
I agree. But, Donna, you hit on something very important I want to bring up here, because you said since March, this Fusion GPS. Now you've got every Democrat and their mother saying, I didn't know anything about this.
I
have no idea where that $9 million came from. I have no idea. You got Debbie Wasserman Schultz. You've got Podesta. You've got Hillary Clinton out there. You now have got Perez, who is now running the DNC. They're all like, I didn't know anything about it. And you've got Leon Panetta going on to a talk show saying, well, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. I mean, how do Democrats vote for Democrats?
Who pays $9 million for opposition research? I mean, come on.
Right.
I mean, you got to follow the money trail again. And who pays $145 million and not expecting to get anything back to the Clinton Foundation? It's a slush fund, the Clinton Foundation, a multi-million-dollar slush fund.
Well, of course it is. And in the end, this is nothing but a crime syndicate because you've got John Podesta sitting in court with Mark Elias saying, I have no idea what's going on with Fusion GPS, while Mark Elias is taking the money to work with Fusion GPS. I mean, he's literally perjuring himself right in court, and nothing ever is going to happen.
When I hear Donna talk about Hillary Clinton, I feel the East Coast start coming out in her. Do you feel the intensity in her voice?
Yeah.
And then you have to really
start kicking in.
You have to start thinking about George Carlin too, because there are 7 dirty words that you can't say on the air, and they come out all the time when you're from New Jersey and New York.
Hey, what do you guys think about Paul Manafort being on the payroll for the Podesta Group?
You know, and Don, I'm glad you brought that up because I think this whole thing that CNN is now touting with this whole grand jury and whatnot, I think that's Manafort. I think Monday we're going to find out. They've been digging into Manafort. They've been digging into his background. They've been looking into his records and his bank accounts and the lawyers and all that stuff. I think you just drew the line that you just connected the dots that I connected a little earlier today. I think Manafort's going to be this fall guy. I think they're understanding that they can't get to Trump through Manafort, so they're going to get a scalp somewhere.
But they better be careful what they wish for because the Podesta Group is close to the DNC. Now, there's a timeline.
That's right.
The Daily Caller put out a timeline, which is really good, and it's out right now. And it really does give you the whole thing of this entire dossier timeline. And it also says on August 25th of 2016, then CIA Director John Brennan briefed then Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid about possible links between Trump associates and Russian operatives. This is according to the New York Times. So this is starting to make the mainstream media. But to me, that shows total collusion on the Democrat side. Not the Republicans.
Yeah, and you're giving, and the whole thing is, Donna, you're giving the Democratic Party way too much credit thinking that this won't come back onto them because I don't think they're that smart about it, to be quite honest, because they wouldn't have been pushing this Russia collusion Trump deal if they would have known where this thing was going. And it's exactly where it came full about. So, look, guys, we're running out of time. This really stinks. I could have this conversation continuously, but where can everybody find you? Tell everybody about Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboy Logic Radio, you can find us at cowboylogic.us. But I gotta take 2 seconds here, guys. And again, Denise Simon, at least for me, now Donna is brilliant, she's talented, she's seasoned, she's experienced. I'm a cowboy that's got horse crap in his boots. Denise Simon is the one that makes me appear to be more knowledgeable than I am. And I would encourage people to also go to founderscode.com. Founderscode.com.
Nothing but research on everything constantly. She's really good.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being on the program. We certainly appreciate it. We count you as part of the Cartel family. Donna Fiducia, Don NEUEN,
thank you, guys.
Cowboy Logic Radio.
Thanks,
catch us Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Rocky, that's it.
Let me talk to you, black people. When you vote for blacks and put them in office under the banner of the Democrat Party, please explain to me what black people get as a result. This was not a nap that we have been taking. We are in a coma. You know what the interesting thing about pensions is? That's today's money given to people who ain't doing nothing for you today. Get off that black Democrat tit that they've been sucking on. Your country is being stolen from you, and the promise is being stolen from your children, and they're telling you it's all right while the rest of the world is trying to lap us. Well, why are we doing so poorly? 2 words: teachers' unions. Are you kidding me?
Black Man Thinking, Monday nights, 9 p.m.
This is Denise Simon. 18 hours a day, I live in a world as an intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. What I find is reprehensible. What I find is terrifying. What I find is treasonous. What I find is treasonous. What I find is treasonous. What I find The mainstream media has completely failed the American people. Failed the American people. Failed the American people. Failed the American people. Join me for the Denise Simon Experience every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Donald Trump came to Washington vowing to drain the swamp and make government work for the American people. But the swamp creatures in D.C. aren't going down without a fight, and the deep state is determined to overturn the election and keep their gravy train rolling. In these turbulent times, it's critical for patriots to stay engaged and be prepared to defend this president. You can stay up to date on Trump's battle to make America great again by listening to America First Radio with Jim Dawes each weeknight at 10 p.m. Eastern on the Liberty Feed.
The deep state wants to stop Donald Trump. Now, Jerome Corsi's powerful new book, Killing the Deep State, rips the lid off the secret war against Trump. Killing the Deep State reveals the shocking plot by the FBI, CIA, and NSA to end the Trump presidency. It's already a #1 Amazon bestseller. Newsmax says you can't ignore Killing the Deep State. Get it at bookstores everywhere or check out the free offer. Go online to deepstate411.com or call 800-406-0921.
You're listening to your local news source, WLBB, News Talk 1330 and FM 106.3. Back to Cowboy Logic Radio. I'm Donna Fiducia, along with Don NEUEN, and our very special guest this half hour is Dinesh D'Souza. The name certainly must ring a bell with many of our listeners. Dinesh is living the American dream until he became politically incorrect. This is my adding in here. He is an American born in India to Roman Catholic parents. He came to the U.S. in 1978 as an exchange student, like Obama, but then again, at the time, he was not a citizen. He graduated Dartmouth College, wrote for the Dartmouth Review, moved to Washington, D.C., where he worked with the Heritage Foundation, was a policy advisor to President Ronald Reagan and millennials. May I suggest you look up that president because he's the greatest one in recent history, in my opinion. And Dinesh became a U.S. citizen in 1991, was president of King's College in New York. He became an outspoken affirmative action and social welfare spokesperson. His 2007 book, The Enemy at Home, which is the cultural left and its responsibility for 9/11, certainly raised a lot of eyebrows. And the media was not all happy with that. In 2016, Obama's America, of course, one of his first movies that really upset the left. His second movie, America, Imagine the World Without Her, which grossed $14.4 million, the highest grossing U.S. documentary of that year. And now, Hillary's America, out in theaters. Hillary's America, The Secret History of the Democrat Party, already the highest grossing documentary of 2016. Dinesh D'Souza, welcome to Cowboy Logic Radio.
Hello, and it's good to be on the show.
You know, I must say, you're a political target of Hillary and Obama, which to me is like a badge of honor. But explain how you got the premise of this movie while serving 8 months in for an illegal campaign contribution for a Republican in New York City, which has a snowball's chance in hell of getting elected anyhow. But explain to us how that all came about.
Well, the candidate was a longtime college friend of mine, somebody I knew very well at Dartmouth. So I wanted to help her campaign, even though I realized it was a little bit of a uphill or quixotic crusade. Apparently, I gave $20,000 over the campaign finance limit. Now, there was no corruption. I wasn't trying to buy offices or gain any kind of appointment or anything like that. Now, no American has actually gone to prison or been locked up for doing what I did. This has never happened in U.S. history. But the Obama administration was mad because I made a film about Obama that showed him to be a complete hypocrite. And so he unleashed the Justice Department on me, the FBI on me, and I got this 8-month overnight sentence. So, it was not good. It was a lemon. I tried to take the lemon and turn it into lemonade. And I put those scenes right into the movie. I would have shown my actual confinement in the movie, but the judge panicked and he issued an order that forbade me from filming my confinement, and so I had to recreate it. But I recreated it in the film exactly the way it was.
How does George Soros donate $25 million to Hillary? And I mean, it's astounding, the double standard.
Yeah, so this thing is all a big racket because obviously had I called a lawyer, he would have told me, Dinesh, you can absolutely give the money and here are 5 ways to do it. The obvious way is to give through a PAC when you don't have the same campaign finance limits. That's how people go to $25,000 dinners for Obama or for Hillary. So this is all a kind of a game. And this was a case where Obama basically said, let's get this guy. And we live at a time when federal statutes are so elastic and so amorphous that literally if they target any American, they could figure out some way, some tax way, or if you're a doctor, they'll charge you with, illegally prescribing pain medicine. They'll come up with something, and then they will offer you a deal in which you either go to trial and face 5 years in prison, or you go in for 6 months and pay a fine, and even innocent people are likely to plead guilty under those choices.
This is not your father's JFK Democrat Party. This is so far to the left, so far removed. I mean, by today's standards, you'd think JFK would be a conservative Republican.
I think there's been a transformation, but it isn't just that the Democrats have moved left. It's that they have kind of given in to a certain kind of gangsterism that you see a bit of it in Obama, but you see even more of it, I believe, in Hillary. At the end of the day, Obama is an ideologue, but he's willing to be kind of gangsterish in going around skirting the law in getting there. So, for example, he'll ignore the immigration laws, or he'll ignore the work provisions in welfare reform, or he'll selectively implement Obamacare, or he'll ignore the Defense of Marriage Act. This is Obama. But Hillary is, I think the Clintons are sort of gangsters from start to finish. They've been running rackets since the Arkansas days. They're on the make. They're not for or against corporations. They're for corporations that give money to them, and they're against corporations that don't. That's kind of their ideology. And they've been renting out the Lincoln bedroom, renting out American foreign policy, selling pardons to big-time criminals. This is their MO. This is who they are. And now we've had crooks in America before, but we didn't know in advance. We found out they were bad guys and we got rid of them. With the Clintons, we already know. So it's a very interesting mark of character. The Democrats have still chosen to push her forward. And it's going to be interesting to see what the American people have to say about this in November.
What really gets me as a former member of the mainstream media in New York for almost 30 years, the lengths, the contortionists in the mainstream media today surprises even me. I mean, they will do and say anything to protect Hillary Clinton.
It's unbelievable. And here's a small example. We have a movie and it's out in the theaters. It's in about 350 theaters now. It will expand to 500 theaters next month. It's the top political film of the year. We've left Michael Moore in the dust. He made a film about a year ago. It grossed $3.8 million in its entire theatrical run. We grossed $4 million our first weekend. So we've got a film out there. It's about the election. It makes all these controversial claims. Audiences love it. And yet, if you watch CNN, the mainstream, any of the networks, NPR, you would not know this movie exists. So this is actually kind of a travesty. It's not even journalism, because even a journalist will cover a movie as a news story and discuss it. These people don't want to discuss it because they feel it's damaging to Hillary. Let's just leave it and hope it goes away.
Dinesh D'Souza, on behalf of my family, I want to thank you for taking the fall, getting hit like you have been, walking around with a bullseye on your back to preach the truth to the American people. We have been longtime fans of your work. We appreciate what you're doing to help foment and push forward the truth and our fight for regaining and restoring America, because You are the man standing on top of the mountain as far as Donna and I and our listeners are concerned. And a huge hat tip to you on that, sir. We were one.
Well,
okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, sorry. I was just going to say I appreciate that so much. You know, for years I was just an author and speaker, and I think I was a nuisance to the left because of my books. But once I started doing the movies, it put me in a completely different league just because of the number of people who see films. Lots of people that you'd never see in line at Barnes & Noble, and often people whose politics are amenable to being changed. People go to a movie for entertainment. They go, wow, I never saw things that way. You can watch a film in 90 minutes, and it can change you a little bit on the inside.
Well, I have personally witnessed people that have gone to see your films and have changed. And we are driving as many people as we can to not only into the theaters now to see Hillary's America, but also everything we can to promote your past two films and your books. We are, and we're not targeting conservatives. Conservatives...
You're preaching to the choir. Yeah.
We're pushing potential Hillary voters. We're the supporters of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama is who we are driving toward your work. One of the things that I wanted to seriously hat tip you for was, and you may have done this immediately after the film was released. I noticed it a few days after we went and saw the film. But you have put on your website a page that shows all of the factual support for every one of your claims in the film. And that, to me, was so huge. I wanted to figure out a way to blast that through social media, just that page, if nothing else, because that is where you've come up with the proof. You've shown and documented exactly everything that substantiates everything you said in that film.
Yes, I appreciate that. We had guys who were actors in the film, who played roles, including the role of slaves. And these were not conservatives. These were guys who auditioned through the normal acting process, the members, some of them of the Screen Actors Guild. So they came to the movie, you may say, innocent or raw. And then they saw the movie and they saw the scenes being put together. And they'd hear me make statements in the voiceover of the film, like, I say at one point in 1860, the year of the Civil War, no Republican owned a slave. All the slaves in the whole country were owned by Democrats. And these guys, their jaws would drop and they'd go, what? Is this true? Can you support this? And I'd be like, yes, I'm writing a whole book that will have all the chapter and verse and all the references. So my book, Hillary's America, is out in stores now. It's actually #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. But we also got the idea, our little film team did, to put up a website where we just take actual claims in the movie and provide the backing for each one of them. And it's amazing that the critics have been thrashing around about this movie and using all the big words they know. It's agitprop, it's delusional, blah, blah, blah. But it's all empty rhetoric. They can't find a single factual claim in a densely packed film that they can even seriously contest, let alone refute.
Well, that has to be the case for you, because everything you do is under a microscope. So you know darn well every little fact you put in your movies is going to be looked at and scrutinized. And that's what I wanted to say, is all three of your movies are spot on with information. Dare I say, the public education system in this country is so dumbed down. When I said earlier, tell a millennial about Ronald Reagan being the best president of our lifetime, really, our website, our emails are at Reagan.com. I talk to people and they go, oh, how do you spell that? What is that? I'm like, it's the president, Reagan. It's unbelievable how so few people know American history. And explain to Dinesh D'Souza how the Democrat Party essentially has hijacked the notion that the Republicans were pro-slavery when they, again, were the party of Lincoln.
Yeah, if you asked a black guy off the street, which is the party of slavery, of segregation, of Jim Crow, of lynching, and the Ku Klux Klan, and opposition to the civil rights movement of the 1960s, they would almost surely say, well, that's obviously the Republican Party. But no, that's the actual history of the Democratic Party. Now, the broader problem you're touching upon is that the progressives dominate academia, Hollywood, and the media. And these are three of the biggest megaphones of our culture. So it gives these guys a chance to put out a lot of propaganda, a lot of disinformation. Now, how do they do that? Well, the way they do that is very clever. It's not that they deny the sort of sins, if you will, of American history, but these are the sins of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is the party that threw the American Indians off their land and did the so-called Trail of Tears. The Democratic Party used the Ku Klux Klan as a domestic, an arm of domestic terrorism for 30 years. The Democratic Party cut deals with the worst racists in America to exclude blacks from New Deal programs and block anti-lynching laws. This is the Democratic Party. So they take all the bad stuff that they did and they blame it on the South. The South did it. Or they blame it on America. Oh, America did genocide against the Indians. No, if America did these things, they would still be going on. Obviously, some Americans did them and other Americans stopped them. The Republican Party has a glorious history of opposition to bigotry and defense of not only emancipation, but equal rights under the law, not just for blacks, but also for women. Very few people know the Democratic Party tried to block women's suffrage for 30 years. They fought it in Congress, and finally, when they lost, they fought it in the states, where they lost again. So this is their history. This is the mountain that Hillary sits on top of. And she knows this history, by the way, because she often appeals to it in kind of disguised ways. So I think this movie, in that sense, is a truth-telling movie. It's a whistleblowing movie. It kind of blows the lid off a whole generation of propaganda that people have been subjected to, particularly young people and blacks. And that's why I'm so proud of the movie. I wish I could get every black, every Latino, and every independent voter in the theater to see the movie.
I have said repeatedly through the past 3.5 years that we have had this radio show that black Americans have outlived their usefulness to the Democrat Party. And for the past 60 years, the Democrat Party's been doing nothing but using black Americans. And this traces back, obviously, to Lyndon B. Johnson, which I was so glad that you had illustrated in your film how, first of all, Lyndon B. Johnson, who many on the left revere as the civil rights president, was nothing more than a racist bigot who used black Americans. And that's a point I try to drive home to a lot of my black friends, is that, guys, you've outlived your usefulness. You've been used for 60 years by the Democrat Party, and now they are casting you away. The Republican Party, the Tea Party specifically, is standing there with open arms waiting to embrace black Americans. And I was just thrilled that you illustrated that in your film.
I think that perhaps the most important intellectual contribution of this movie, Hillary's America, and the book of the same title, is to debunk this idea of a big switch. Because when Democrats like to deny their history, but once you force them to admit it, they go, oh, yeah, well, yeah, we kind of did all those horrible things. And we were the ones who interned Japanese Americans in World War II, and we're the ones who did this and that. But we changed. One day we woke up, we became racially enlightened, and all the racist Democrats became Republicans. Now, this is the doctrine of the big switch, and it's the ultimate sort of last resort defense of the Democrats. I show in this movie and in the book that the big switch is a big lie, that if you make a list of the racist Dixiecrats, this was a breakaway faction from the Democratic Party called the Dixiecrats, only one guy, Strom Thurmond, moved to the Republican Party. Every other Dixiecrat remained in the Democratic Party. So young people who just say, oh, well, you're forgetting the big switch, Dinesh, they've just been sold a bunch of propaganda. So this is a complicated topic, but debunking the big switch establishes once and for all that the party of Woodrow Wilson, FDR, and LBJ is and remains today the party of bigotry.
Yeah, really, if you look at the big picture right now, Donald Trump is saying what Republicans have said all along. We want you to thrive. We want to get government out of the way. Now, obviously, he's not saying it as well as Reagan could say it, but it's what we have to choose from between him and Hillary. But if the government stands aside, the middle class and all Americans can flourish, where the Democrat Party is still trying to keep everybody, as many as possible, on the government plantation via free stuff. Now it's free education. We can't afford it. This is a house of cards, don't you think?
Yeah, on the old plantations, what the Democrats tried to do is steal the labor of people. That's obviously what slavery is. It's a form of theft. You're stealing a man's labor by making him work for you for free. In the new plantations, the urban plantations the Democrats have created in Oakland and Detroit and St. Louis and so on, they want people's votes. That's all they care about, and they don't mind. In fact, they kind of prefer that people don't work, that they remain in a kind of squalor, that they don't really rise up. Because if there were ladders of opportunity in an inner city, Atlanta or Detroit, people would go up the ladder, dust themselves off, and walk off the plantation. They wouldn't need the Democratic Party. So the goal of the Democrats is to create these plantations, today not just for blacks. They create barrios for Latinos, ghettos and slums for other immigrants. They create reservations for Native Americans. They take these minorities and stick them in these squalid places, and then they claim that they're on their side. It's just the most utter shameful hypocrisy. And the Republicans need to become the champion of upward mobility in the society. I'm an immigrant. That's what my politics are based on. And I'd like to see the Republican Party more full-throatedly embrace this idea of ladders of opportunity. Now, the government has a role. The role is to basically hold a ladder, which means to enforce contracts and allow people to have their rights. But it's our job to climb the ladder.
But you don't see that anymore. And again, the double standard is mind-boggling. You've got a Democrat Party with emails that have been leaked calling Mexicans taco bowls and berating Jews and talking downward about basically all minorities, and it gets swept under the rug. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. But God forbid Donald Trump actually says what turns out to be true, that perhaps this guy Khan's wife couldn't talk because Khan is an immigration lawyer that does believe that Sharia law trumps the Constitution. Nothing. And just weeks of incessant attacks in the mainstream media on Donald Trump. At this point, I'm surprised he's even in the running. It's so bad.
Well, this is why I think it's so important to knock out and drain the moral capital that the Democrats claim. Because think about it this way. If the Democrats were always the good guys, if they were on the right side of history, if they were and are, as they say, the champion of the ordinary man, the little guy, then these emails would be kind of anomalous. Like, gee, well, this was just some overzealous staffers getting carried away. But if the Democrats have always been the party of bigotry, as I say, then these emails take on a new light. The Democrats essentially have learned to talk a nicer game in public, put on a song and dance routine in Philadelphia, but this is who they really are. And that's why I think this film is so useful to Trump and the RNC. Now, we're trying to get Trump to watch the film. He did tweet out, hey, go see Hillary's America. Good. But I don't think he's seen it yet. And second, and most important and odd, if I were Michael Moore, the whole Democratic Party would have lined up behind me. But with this movie, I haven't heard a whisper from the RNC. So even though we've created a very powerful form of messaging that they can't do, they wouldn't even know how to make a film like this. They don't have the reach, the historical knowledge. They don't have the technical skills to do it. And yet when we do it, you think they'd help us get the word out, but they haven't.
Exactly. And Hillary's the movie, Hillary's America the movie, and Hillary's America the book. Dinesh D'Souza, you are doing just yeoman's work with this, and we're so happy to try to promote it as we can. And we tell everybody, take a liberal to see it, too. Take a liberal to see the movie before they vote. The Daily Caller is reporting in an excellent piece by Richard Pollack, and he's been on the cutting edge of this whole Clinton Foundation fiasco. There's now a joint FBI U.S. attorney's probe. This is Rudy Giuliani's old office, New York attorney's office, is underway into the Clinton Foundation. This is just broken over the weekend, in fact. I'm wondering if this will get any kind of legs, but this is not just looking into emails. This is actually looking into what is essentially a multi-million, in fact, some say billion-dollar slush fund, tax-free for the Clintons.
Yeah, the foundation, it's so obvious, is a front. It's not a real foundation. It gives less than 10% of its revenue away. So this is basically a hoarding mechanism and, in fact, a bribery receptacle for the Clintons. They modified policies when Hillary was Secretary of State, and in gratitude, donors poured tens of millions of dollars in the foundation. We report 2 of these scandalous cases in the movie, but there's more in my book, and there's more in Peter Schweitzer's book, Clinton Cash. And so this is basically a Pandora's box just waiting to be pried open. Now, as a conservative, I'm not too hopeful when the other side tries to do our work for us, because I always feel like they will betray us in the end, kind of the way that Comey did. So many Republicans were crossing their finger. Wait till James Comey, no. But at the end of the day, Comey decided to be an obedient good boy. And probably the New York people will do the same at the end of this. So I think at the end of the day, Republicans have to do the work of Republicans, and that's the way to help save America.
Yeah, the infighting's just not going to work.
Let me ask one final question here, if I can, because we're running short on time. The polls that are out, I think, are bogus, and I've been saying it for a couple of weeks now. What are your thoughts on these polls that are out? Because you see Hillary Clinton getting together to have a an event or a rally of some kind, and there may be 1,000, 1,500 people there.
Hundreds.
You see Donald Trump getting together, and you got tens of thousands of people at these events and these rallies. What are your thoughts on the mainstream media absolutely lying about the poll numbers?
Well, most of the mainstream media is completely in the Clinton camp. And not only that, you've got a majority of corporations that are behind Hillary. That's unusual because corporations normally break at least even, in fact, generally favoring the Republicans. Many of the wealthy donors that typically support the Republicans are balking. So I think that although Trump is a very powerful force, there is a terrifying assemblage of forces against him. Essentially, it's the entire elite establishment of this country is mobilized against him. So he needs all the help he can get. And that's why I think we have something to contribute to this debate. We happen to have created just a very powerful, timely vehicle. I should mention Hillary'sAmericaTheMovie.com. That's the website. You can watch a trailer. You can plug in your zip code. It'll tell you where the movie's playing near you. So at the end of the day, I think this is a winnable election for Trump, but he's got to realize that he's up against it, that very powerful people want to take him down and will stop at nothing to do that. And so he needs to find allies like me who are trying to help him.
Exactly. Remember also when Bill Clinton was in office, there was one of the many scandals then was that they had a bunch of dirt on Republicans and they said, oh, we'll return those files. And supposedly they did. I venture to say they have dirt on everyone and people are afraid of the Clintons. That's the reason why this is happening. Dinesh D'Souza, I want to tell you a real quick story. Kathleen Willey, who was a Bill Clinton victim, has become quite a good friend of ours. She went to go see Hillary's America, the movie, in her home state of Virginia. And when the lights came back up, the woman sitting next to her said, "You're her. I saw you in that movie." and she's like, "Yeah, that's me. I'm one of those victims." And she's behind you 100% as well. But Dinesh D'Souza, everybody, please buy the book, Hillary's America, which again is New York Times bestseller. Hillary'sAmericaTheMovie.com. As Dinesh said, you can go online, Hillary'sAmericaTheMovie.com, plug in your zip code, find out where it's playing, and your mission, should you decide to accept it, is to take a liberal to see this movie before Election Day. Dinesh D'Souza, thank you so much for joining us here on Cowboy Logic Radio. It's been a real pleasure.
My pleasure.
That wraps up another Cowboy Logic show, folks. Find us at cowboylogic.us. Have a great week, everyone, and God bless America.